All right, welcome back, everyone. Mark Becker here, founding partner of Chathexis Partners, and today we are joined by Kevin Kreamer. He's with the Giving IQ, and they recently put out a guide called "The Ultimate Guide to Non-Cash Giving for Nonprofits," and that's going to be kind of the outline and the topic of our conversation today. So, welcome, Kevin. You want to go ahead and introduce yourself? Tell us a
Yeah,
little bit about your nonprofit journey and where you're at today.
sure. Thanks, Mark. So Kevin Kreamer. I've been in and around nonprofit tech for, gosh, going on 25 years. And I think, Mark, you and I have known each other for
All of that,
probably
pretty much.
most of that along the way. So my journey, I've been at Blackbot, I've been at Omatic, I've been at Virtuous, I've contracted with a number of other companies that serve the sector. And I have been involved with Giving IQ, formerly Donate Stock, for about the last 2.5 years. Currently serve as the Vice President of Growth, which is a fancy way of saying sales and partnerships here. And so wear a lot of different hats in that role. Giving IQ, very high level, focused on making non-cash giving easier, is probably the easiest way to put it. So
That's the perfect elevator pitch. It's succinct and to the point, and that guide that you put out has a lot of great nuggets in it. So let's dive right
yeah.
in. Why do you think non-cash giving is so underutilized in the nonprofit sector?
Yeah, that's like the million-dollar question. Actually, there's a couple of million-dollar questions, but I think there's awareness part of it. Some of the conversations when I first started working with at the time Donate Stock, I went to a conference, and the first conference that I was there on behalf of Donate Stock, I'm having conversations, and this is where like words matter, and I would say, hey, tell me about or do you receive stock? And, what does that look like? And people would say, oh, well, we get them. Well, get is a very reactive term. And when I would dig into that, they were a pain to get, they were a pain to ask. The expectations and the process were very difficult. And we had one organization that said, yeah, we could probably get 2x the number of stock gifts if we went out and asked for them, but they're really a pain. And so there's the process part of it, and then there's the awareness part of it as well. And I think that's more on the donor side. And when we talk about non-cash gifts, it's more than just stock. And so each channel has a little bit of nuance in there as well. But the typical process that you see is multi-steps. And a lot of times it puts the onus on the donor to go do a whole bunch of stuff but on your timeline, like, hey, call the office to do more or call the broker to do more. Well, if I want to do that after hours, that's a challenge, right? Like there's a lot that sort of goes into that. I know we're going to dive into it, but awareness is a big one and the process is a big one because that's just a barrier to entry for sure.
Yeah, and I think that kind of answers my second question, because the guide talks about how 90% of household wealth is tied up in and held in non-cash assets. And you kind of just touched on a bit why nonprofits focus on cash donations because it's very transactional, it's very simple, right? Yeah, click this button, give.
Right. And it is, there's so many options and choices, right? Like there is a little bit of channel fatigue, I think. When you talk to fundraisers, it's like, man, I'm wearing 1,000 different hats. Where do I focus my time and energy, depending on the size of the organization? It doesn't get lost on me that fundraising is hard business. Some organizations have more resources than others, but even small organizations can take non-cash gifts if you give them a path to do that for sure. But I think, to your point, I mean, the transactional stuff is just easier. And a lot of the channels that we have and a lot of the even the metrics that people get sort of metric on are focused on transactional gifts as well.
Yeah, yeah. Out of the non-cash kind of vehicles or channels, which ones are growing fastest these days?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it depends on how you look at it. It's interesting. I'd say overall the DAF channel is by far has become much more popular at many levels. It's become popular within fundraisers. They're more comfortable talking about it. The access points to actually open a DAF have changed. Like that, the barrier to entry is now you don't have to have several $1,000s to invest in that or to put into a DAF. And so like the barrier to entry has become a lot lower. That overall has become much more common. In fact, I was just on site with an organization. I was talking to them, and they're like, "Oh, we get them all the time." It's now become more of a payment option, if you will, in a lot of cases. For them, the dollar amounts were really low. I mean, what they mentioned to me was like, "Oh yeah, we get them all the time, $50, $100." People are using that as a payment option for donations. That said, percentage wise, crypto has actually ticked up, but the overall percentage to giving is small. So it's sort of, it's not hitting as big of a factor, if you will. But there's a lot of upside. I know we're going to talk about stock and QCDs as well. There's a lot of upside there because there's just so much wealth tied up in those assets for sure. It's probably the place where there's a lot of just in terms of awareness, there's a lot of opportunity there to talk about that more.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's where technology comes into it, right? So removing the friction. How does technology like Giving IQ help streamline that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. So I spend a lot of my time actually looking at websites before I talk to an organization.
Hmm.
And one, the path to find if I want to give stock or if I want to give crypto or whatever, where do I go and find that? Usually there's a bit of a map to even find.
Right.
Like, where do I find that? That's just adding friction to the process. And then when I get to, hey, here's a page or some information dedicated to stock, it would say, okay, hey, now go call your broker or fill out this form and take it to your broker or call the office, email the office. The process from there is really challenging. And by and large, that's pretty common for what I see on most websites. The way we've approached it is how do we take what people are, accustomed to in pretty much anything that they do, whether that's making a transactional donation, whether that's buying something online, whether that's trading stock. They do that on apps, they do that electronically. That's kind of
Hmm.
what they're expected to do. And so our approach is how do we take the friction out of the process, allow them to do that in what is more of a web form, and then take the heavy lifting of contacting brokerages, liquidating stock, and doing all of that for them. Or, in the case of crypto, how do we sort of do the same thing with crypto? And we could liquidate that, send the cash to the organization. Big thing there, Mark, is the donor experience. We went through this how many years ago
Right.
with online forms, and we learned, oh,
Yep.
by the way, when you ask them for 3 pages of personal information, the abandonment rate goes up, right? You add friction into the process. People don't complete it. So, that's what's typical is a very heavy step process that we're asking people to do. And that's not common anymore. Yeah.
Let's dig into a couple of them individually. So stock giving, why is stock giving such an untapped opportunity? I mean, you kind of touched on it. Let's kind of drill down next
Yeah.
level and how can you simplify it?
Yeah, I think one, we'll take it from a couple of different angles. So from a donor perspective, a couple of things there. Who are making the donations? One, we serve donors. We also serve financial advisors. Last year, about 60% of our gifts came through financial advisors. So
Interesting.
that's a really important sort of
Yeah.
group to know. Now, granted, they're doing service for their clients as well. But believe me, financial advisors don't want a multi-step processes either. They want something that's easy, quick, because they're not necessarily making tons of money by donating
Right.
assets. Um, but that's, there's the process of that and the awareness of that is one thing. And when we ask donors to give and we say, hey, is it 500, 1,000, you may get that in cash. I spoke with a fundraiser 2 weeks ago, She found out one of their supporters had just exited a company, was doing pretty well, and she had the like, I'm gonna take a big swing here. And she went and talked to them about donating assets. And believe me, what they came away with was a very impactful gift from that person because they went big, right? You know, that piece of asking and on the fundraiser side, you know, there's a confidence and a comfort level where I think folks aren't necessarily, this isn't the place where they're comfortable.
Right.
They're not a financial advisor. They're not a tax attorney. They don't know all the laws. How do you ask for that? What do you speak about? Those things are all, you know, that's not a place where people spend a lot of time. So there is a comfort level in that. We try and address that through education. So we'll put that out there. But the other byproduct of that is just the confidence of, hey, if I'm going to ask you, Mark, about giving in different channels, and we get to a place where you're going to give stock, if I know where I'm going to direct you to make that gift is a painful process, I'm probably not going to direct you there. That's not a good situation.
Right.
My confidence in sending you in that direction and then maybe having you be a little bit uh, frustrated is not good from a fundraising confidence. It's also not good from a donor confidence. If you get there and it's like, you know, do they know how to take this gift? Are they going to do something well with it? That piece is part of the psychology. So
That totally makes sense. Yeah. And it seems really worth the effort for the nonprofits to not only, have people that fully understand giving stock and DAFs and QCDs and the rest of it, but also a process for it. Like you said, once you understand it, that's great, but making it has to be simple to take, right?
yeah. Well, and so the flip side of that with a lot of these channels, you don't get information about the donor. People like through a standard channel. If we get a gift through, say, a brokerage, I might get gift information, but I may not get the donor information. And now I'm spending hours of time trying to figure out who that gift came from because, as we all know in fundraising, I want to build a relationship. I want to thank the donor. Stewardship is a critical component. It shouldn't get lost on any of us. Like that is fundraising 101. And if you're getting pretty significant gifts,
Right.
you want to do those things. But if you don't have the information, or it takes a lot of time to get there, the horror stories we hear is like, oh yeah, it's really not good when a donor calls and says, hey, did you get the gift I gave, several weeks ago? I haven't heard from you.
Yeah.
That's not a good situation at all. And part of that is like if you can make it easy, you can provide the information, stewardship happens faster, good things happen from that.
So there's stocks and then, DAFs is kind of another segment of that. How are they kind of held and worked and how do you support those transactions?
Yeah, across the channels, our process is pretty much the same. We on the front end, we want to collect donor information because we want to make sure that we can pass that through to the organization in a timely fashion, specifically for those stewardship elements. And that is a big part of it. Just data collection and data transparency is part of that. How the vehicles get processed, very different from stock to DEF to crypto. Stock's probably the more complex one for sure. In the stock perspective, just to talk nuts and bolts a little bit,
Yeah.
we have two options. We can pass over the stock to you, to the organization to take control of, and you could do whatever you want with it if you want to liquidate it, if you want to keep it and hold it or whatever. That is a very small percentage of organizations that we work with want to do that. For a lot of reasons. One, they may not have brokerage accounts, but a lot of times they just want the headache, in which case we'll take the stock, we liquidate it, send you cash. On the DAF side, we're more of a pass through we're not taking control of any of that, but we are making sure that we collect donor information and make the process easy and then make sure that you get sort of that donation at the end of the process. Crypto, we do on the front end, we'll take control of that crypto liquidate it. And there's a lot of questions around, with crypto. A lot of times folks don't even want to mess around with it. We take all
No,
of that on
right.
the front end, and at the end of the day, you get cash gift in hand at the end of the process, and you're not taking control of the crypto in any way, shape, or form during that process.
And I
So,
think that's a really important thing because people hear crypto, specifically in a lot of cases, they're like, nope, don't want it. Well, no one's telling you to hold on to crypto.
right.
They're just saying if you want to accept it, have people donate that, but have it, immediately turned into cash. And same thing with the stock usually, right?
Yep. 100%. And with the crypto, we get a lot of, well, we're worried about fraud and so forth. I mean, we take that risk on the front end, if you think
Yeah.
about it that way. And there's donor communication is a big part of this. So like if I were to make a gift in any of these channels, you get an email notification that says, yes, gift has been initiated, it is in process. The communication side of that is a big piece of it. It doesn't go into a black hole. I'm not sure, if you're not sure where it is, I mean, that just, we're addressing those as well. And visibility wise, you get, as a donor, I have a portal. As an organization, I have a portal into information. Again, it's having visibility is a big piece of that equation for sure.
And all of that is just making sure, yeah, I mean, and on average, these amounts are exponentially larger than just standard online donations. So even more reason. I mean, you want to know everybody you're getting donations from, but even more reason to be able to tick and tie that back to an individual, thank them, make sure it's legit, and start a relationship with them,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, the stewardship side is paramount.
Yeah.
I was talking with a fundraising consulting group, and we were talking about retention rates that we would see, which are typically higher for higher dollar gifts. I mean, like all good. Nobody's going to say, no, I'm not interested in that, right? And, higher retention of higher dollars. Yes, sign
Right.
me up, right? And their question was, well, is that because the process is just easier? And the donors know how to now, give these assets in the future, or is that because of stewardship? And I think there's probably more research to be done on that, candidly, but I have to believe it's both, right? If it's easier for me to give and you're actually stewarding the gift in a timely and efficient and appropriate fashion, that's fundraising 101, right? I mean, that's what
Mhm.
we want to initiate for sure.
And then we haven't really gone into QCDs yet, but qualified charitable donations. And we're all getting older. Me more so than you, but we're all getting there, and the boomers are all up there at that 70, plus, and
Yeah.
they tend to have more money, and they tend to have more money in savings and trying to protect it from taxes, right? And so QCDs, it's important for everybody to be educated on what's possible there, right? And you help with that as well.
So we're in process of building a solution for that. It should be available by end of summer is where we're tracking on that. But it's an untapped opportunity. There's a lot of upside there. And I think where it sort of fit our core competency in terms of one, non-cash, but two, how do we simplify the process to ensure that those gifts can be made in a way that's very sort of donor centric, and we can provide information to the organization to allow them to do the stewardship side. So those things were, definitely a challenge that we felt like we could solve for sure. That fits our model completely. I think
Mhm.
the piece with QCDs just as much as probably more so. I mean, there's just awareness is a huge challenge. How you speak to those donors, though, I mean, it's still sort of a fundraising initiative. Those are probably people you already know. They probably already love your organization, but the opportunities for them to make a tax advantage gift is a little bit of education and awareness, right? And if they already support your organization, and they can find out that, you know what, they could actually give you more money to fund your mission and get a tax incentive on that. That's a win-win across the board. But, there's education that needs to happen on that. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, beyond technology, education is a huge place. That's a place where we spend a lot of time and resources, hence the
I
guide,
bet.
an example. But part of that is just how do we increase awareness around all of these channels so fundraisers don't have to reinvent the wheel or think about how to communicate, have resources that they could make available. All of that, I think, gets us to the place where we want to get to, which is a better donor experience that funds more mission.
That's yeah, well said. And so everybody listening, go to givingiq.com and right there on the homepage, there's a link to download the guide. That's a great place to start. But other than that, what advice would you give a nonprofit if they're completely new to non-cash
Yeah,
giving, where should they start?
yeah, that's a great question. One thing that I do, and this is for everybody that's out there. This has nothing to do with our solution, so I'll talk about that one first. But go to your website, be a secret shopper,
Hmm.
and if you were somebody that wanted to give stock, what does that experience look like? How many steps does it take? Can I find how to give stock? Do the same thing, and not everybody takes crypto. We believe in the like meet people where they are, right?
Yeah.
Give them options and choices, but make sure that the path is clear on how to get there. And when I say I'm amazed at in some cases, stock is an option or crypto is an option, and man, it is buried. And if I were the donor, there's no way I would have continued on the path to figure out. And then when I get to the page, it says, hey, call the office or call a broker. Man, be a secret shopper and look at that. You can look at you know, look at other sites too, because the ways to give options, if they're clear, that is one place where
Mhm.
we see a big uptick for our clients when they make other ways to give, when they make that really clear, I can go and I can find and I can get to the place I want to be pretty quickly. Man, that's an easy win. And everybody can do that. Even if the option is like, hey, call the office, we could, you know,
Start there.
we
Yeah.
could start
I
there.
I agree. You got to have that funnel, right? You got to have of course, it's natural, if you're a fundraising organization to obviously have a donate button, and that's
Yeah,
great. But yeah, top navigation or somewhere, call to action, ways to give that makes it very clear. Here's again the link to donate
yeah,
online, and here's the other ways to give, and here's all the ways that you can give, and
yeah.
just yeah, streamline.
That that's path one. Make it easy. If you if and I'll give maybe a shout out on donatestock.com. You can go and claim your nonprofit page there. You could brand it. You could put your own language on your nonprofit page. Even if you don't bake that into your website, which that's some other stuff that we provide for easy buttons and things like that, you can still direct people there to make a gift electronically and give the donor a much better experience. We'll still liquidate stock, we'll send it to you, the whole 9 yards. But that's an easy path. There's no cost to do that. And if you're just trying to improve your donor experience, that's an easy win, easy place to go. And I will say, just, you know, if you look at calendar wise, 50% of all stock gifts are made at the end of the year in Q4. High percentage of that is in December. There's still a window of opportunity to take advantage of end of year giving. And it's not too early to think about end of year giving because we got a couple more months before you're ready. Providing educational information ahead of time, that's all a big part of it. And those are things you can do now. I mean, it's not as far away, like it's not as hard to get up and running on that as you may think. So,
Yeah, and I think that's Perfect. Yeah, it's perfect timing for that, right? So let's say we're an organization that is just looking to get into this for this end of year giving because the timing is perfect. Here we are recording this towards the end of June, and they might be listening to this in July or August or September, and planning their end of year. What kind of mistakes do nonprofits make when trying to launch these programs that you can help kind of, help them avoid?
Yeah, waiting too long for that window of opportunity. Now is the time to get your website dialed up. So the ways to give is
Hmm.
there. Doing things like registering your page, and I'll just give a story. When I dug into our data, man, there's so many interesting trends in there, but I'll just share this one. So I was doing an audit for, it was a national brand. I'm not going to call them out, but it was a national brand, and I was interested like what chapters we had sort of registered and doing work with us. And so I was doing an audit of all the transactions that came through the chapters, and I found there was a $10,000 gift that was made on December 30th of last year. I was like, oh, that's really interesting. And so I went and looked at sort of the donor behavior. Turns out on December 30th, they made three different gifts, totaled about $40,000 on the last day of the year to three different organizations. And from a donor perspective, how did they get there? There's so many questions I may have there. But the reality is that window of time that's driven by urgency, that's driven by tax strategy. There is a window to get out there. You have organizations in your house file today, or you have donors in your house file today that have the ability to make these gifts. Just having stuff on your website that says we are ready, willing, and able to receive these gifts, great. Having some communication in your newsletters, in your communication that just says we have ways to give. Let them know. That's a great option. Doesn't have to overtake all of your marketing, but make sure it's part of your marketing. This is the time to plan for that stuff. So when September, October, and you start the end of year rush, you're ready to go and you could take advantage of that.
Yeah, I think that's really, really great advice because sprinkling it in there and don't, it's not overwhelming folks with it. It's just giving them options. And that's what everybody wants this day and age. And I don't know about you, but I was, a product of public education, and they did not teach a whole lot about financial advice
No.
in public schools. So, anything we can do to educate everybody involved in this
Right.
is just benefits everybody.
Correct. And you can also, dependent on, some folks do better job of segmentation as well. You could
Mm.
you could sort of look
Yep.
at, your population and tailor the message as well. And the reality is there's also sort of this major giving initiative as well. And there's probably some relationships you already have that there may be some opportunity there, and how you communicate with them is obviously different. But when you talk about tax advantage giving, they can donate more and have a bigger impact. And if it's somebody who's already tied into your mission, that's that's
Yeah,
great. Those donors want to have more impact.
for
So,
sure. For sure. So yeah, as we're wrapping up here, any last kind of one piece of advice or any final thoughts or anything we haven't covered?
um, here's one. I would say, so for the folks that we've had, and we've been in business going on 7 years now, primarily around the stock side, more recently with DAF and crypto, again, soon to be QCDs. But thinking about the high retention rates with higher dollar, what that ultimately has led to is a compounding impact. And I would just say, there's a this is not going to, any of the non-cash stuff, it's not going to overtake your fundraising initiatives, but it should be part of your strategy for sure. The piece that I would call out is there is a cost of doing nothing on this. The longer
Mhm.
you wait, the longer the snowball effect will happen. the thing that we see in our data is donors are giving, more gifts to the same organizations over and over and over again. They tend to donate to multiple organizations, but they tend to be the same organizations by and large, which is a really interesting trend. And I think for me, my take is, look, they're more sophisticated donors. They're philanthropic in nature for sure, but they're also this is part of their financial strategy. When they have found an easy path to continue to support organizations they care about, the next time they have assets to donate, I'm not out shopping the world. I already know my path, and
Hmm.
you're going to get more of my assets because I know how to do that really quickly. And that's the same with the financial advisors too, by the way. If they have one of their clients and they like to support this organization, the next time, that process is already there. They have that sort of built in. But the longer you wait, those opportunities are going to go. And so I would just call that out as well.
That's a great place to kind of leave it because yeah, the first thing is if they haven't given to you before and given stock to you, then when they go out to your website, make it easy. Oh, great, right there, ways to give. Great, got it. And then once they've done it, I mean, path of least
Right.
resistance. Time to give again. We love this organization, and they made it simple for us. Win-win.
Right. And if I go into my portal, if I log in, I can see the organizations I've given to make that pretty easy to do again.
That's great. That's
Yeah.
great. Well, yeah, Kevin, thank you so much for your time today. Thanks everybody for listening in. And yeah, we'll catch you next time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Mark.
All right.